Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Liberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how.
Today, I want to address this common question that independent consultants get, which is, can I pick your brain? Whether you're getting that question directly, can I pick your brain? Or it's hidden in a request or a question that doesn't immediately jump out as, can I pick your brain? But that's what they're really saying. We need to address this today because it's something that holds you back from achieving what's possible for you in your consulting business. And also, it happens in two ways, one of which you might be surprised by or not even realizing it is a form of this question. I want to make sure that you're not letting that slide by either. So today, we're going to focus on how to handle that question, can I pick your brain, for you as an independent consultant. Welcome to episode 205 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melisa Liberman, and we're ready to dive in. Have you had this question before? Can I pick your brain? You probably have. So many consultants that I talk to, including myself, get this very often, sometimes every week in some form or fashion. And it might seem harmless. It might seem easy to handle. It might seem like something you want to do to give back, but this is costing you in your business. And I want to share with you today's episode to help you know what it's costing you, how to handle it. And it doesn't mean that you have to turn all of these can I pick your brains away, but you want to have a plan in place so that it doesn't eat away at you in a way that creates resentment or eat away at you in a way that takes away valuable time on your calendar that feels productive, but it's really not. So that's what we're up to here today. Let's talk about the agenda, and then we'll go right into the episode. So we'll start off. I'll give you the companion resource that goes with today's episode. Then I'll give you a few examples so we're on the same page about what this sounds like. You've probably heard these phrases before, and some of them you might not realize is a form of pick your brain. Then we'll talk about the real cost of this. Why does this matter? We'll talk about the identity shift that is really important to make as you're tackling this situation. I'll give you what I call the PYB protocol, pick your brain protocol, so you know what to say yes to for yourself. And then what to do if you decide to take this meeting. For sure, there will be times where you agree to pick your brain type meetings. I do occasionally, not nearly as much as I used to, but you want to make the most out of that meeting if you do take it. And so we'll talk about that. And then we'll wrap up the episode with the very specific steps to put this into action for you and your business. All right, my friend, the companion resource. I recommend that you download my book, Grow Your Consulting Business, the 14-step roadmap to make your independent consulting goals a reality. Chapter 16 focuses on business owner mindset. And at the end of the day, what we're going to be talking about today has a root cause of mindset. And we'll talk about what that means here in a moment. But this is a critical success factor to have an aligned mindset for you that is no longer an employee mindset, but is a business owner mindset, one you've created purposefully. And that's why I'm recommending this companion resource. So go check out Chapter 16, which is your business owner mindset system. And you can download the book for free, or you can go buy it on Amazon. All right, so grab that and the toolkit that goes with it. So when you download the book, you also get a toolkit that helps you put each of the steps in place for your business. Okay, now let's talk about today's topic, pick your brain. What does this look like? Here's what I find. This actually has two buckets, if you will, two ways that this commonly impacts independent consultants. And why I say one of them might be surprising to you is you might not realize that the two that I'm going to share with you here in a moment They're both impacting you and what you're doing and what you're not doing and how essentially you're thinking of yourself. So, what are the two buckets? The first is, of course, your domain expertise. This is where people are asking you, I'd love to pick your brain about X, Y, or Z, your expertise, right? Or it's a networking meeting that becomes somehow a free consulting session or free advisory. Or it's a discovery call where someone reaches out and it's an inbound opportunity and they want to walk you through what they're needing, why they need it, and get your opinion and suggestions and recommendations, and may even be writing a proposal around that. But it was really never a true opportunity. They want to get access to your expertise. Or maybe it sounds like a quick question. We get those, right? A quick question type text from a past client or past colleague. Those are the pick your brain type scenarios. You've probably encountered a lot of those as it relates to your domain expertise. That's what we're talking about. That's the first bucket that we're going to be talking about here today. The second bucket is actually pick your brain about becoming a consultant. How many people reach out to you asking, "Oh, I know that you're independent now. I need to pick your brain. I want to do this too eventually." Or I'm already doing this. I need your help. You may even be doing this to other people as well. This is the person who wants to know how you become a consultant, not how to engage you. This is the let's catch up coffee that then they come and are picking your brain about how to become an independent consultant. So think about this as we go through this episode today. These two scenarios are very common for independent consultants, and both of them are important to address. And that's what we're here for. Okay. So let's next dive into the cost, the real cost of saying yes by default. Again, I'm not here on this episode telling you to never take a pick your brain type call again. I'm not telling you to turn away all pick your brain type meetings. I don't even know that it's possible to fully filter all of them out when someone kind of bait and switches you. So that's not our goal here. But what our goal is here is to make sure that you know exactly what you're saying yes to, what you're not saying yes to, what the alternative is, and not just saying yes by default, because that's what we often do. So times we want to be helpful. We want to expand the relationship. We don't want to leave opportunity on the table, future opportunity on the table. We want to be helpful to other people. Those are all reasons why oftentimes we say yes by default. But there is a cost, of course, right? And the obvious cost is your time. You've got an hour here, an hour there. Those hour here, hour there add up. I talk to so many consultants who tell me they spend time going for coffee chats with people who want to pick their brain about becoming a consultant. Now, listen, there are times when I'm coaching independent consultants where I just tell them, you've got to cut this off entirely for the next quarter or the next 6 months. You've got a lot on your plate that you're trying to accomplish, and this is not part of it. Other consultants tell me, and they can open it back up again. When if you're someone who has a really big goal that you're working toward, this does not clear the bar in terms of where the priority is. And we'll talk about how to handle it here in a moment. We don't have to turn people away and not be helpful, but you also don't need to give them an hour of your time or 30 minutes of your time. The other scenario I hear so often and really push back on consultants who tell me they're doing this is the amount of coffee chats they're going out for with people who want to pick their brain about becoming independent consultants. That is incredibly expensive. Of course, you've got the drive time to get there, you've got the time there, you've got the drive time back, you've got the switching costs. That's incredibly expensive. And again, I'm not here to tell you never do that, but for sure you want to be very discerning about when it is you are going to do it. So that's what we're going to build for you here in today's episode, this pick your brain protocol. So the obvious cost is your time, right? But let's talk about the less obvious costs. So this first bucket of pick your brain related to your domain expertise, where they're wanting to pick your brain about types of engagements you've done, past engagements you've done that are similar to what they might be planning for or doing right now, strategy that they want to pick your brain about, AI initiatives they want to pick your brain about, like, fill in the blank here about where these types of topics that relate to your domain expertise, and you're getting these type of pick your brain questions. The cost here, in addition to your time, is that you're giving away the thing that you charge for. You're losing the opportunity. You're missing the opportunity to figure out how to turn that into a paid engagement, how to turn that into paid advisory type work. It's not that you're just losing the hourly rate that you might have charged someone if you were charging by the hour. It's that you're missing the opportunity to say, listen, this is what I do as a consultant. If this is something that's important to you, let's talk about a short advisory engagement and what that would look like. When you don't take that initiative, you're losing that opportunity to figure out how to sell the value of that type of engagement. It's not about the $300 an hour that you might miss out on, or the $500 an hour that you might miss out on. It's about you losing the opportunity to figure out how to sell your advisory work. So that domain expertise bucket, when that cost is incredibly high because it compounds over time, right? The longer it takes you to figure out how to sell that type of work, the more money and flexibility and autonomy and fulfillment you leave on the table. And then the other one, the bucket of becoming a consultant, I want to pick your brain about how to become a consultant. When you say yes to those, the less obvious cost, in addition to the time, right? The less obvious cost is you positioning yourself as a peer, as someone who's helping someone leave corporate, for example, or get more traction once they've already left. Not as a business owner who's got a practice that is incredibly successful. Oftentimes you go into those coffee chats kind of commiserating or talking with them about, what it's like and how to do this, and asking them questions about how they think you should do it. And it becomes much more of a peer-to-peer kind of conversation, even though they haven't even started consultancy yet, versus I'm a successful business owner. I don't take these types of meetings. I'm a successful business owner. I've got alternatives to these types of meetings. So look here to see where you've got the obvious costs in terms of your time, but the less obvious costs of the way that you're operating, the way you're thinking of yourself, the way you're thinking about yourself relative to other people, and the success, the possibility for you and success in your business, and the skills that you're missing out on building. These are really important to recognize, because it's not just the time or that $500 that you could have charged. It's so much more than that. Because at the end of the day, the saying yes to this pick your brain might feel comfortable, but that's the thing that's keeping you below your potential. When you're saying yes to these types of things over and over again and thinking that they'll lead to a next step eventually, you're missing out on the opportunity to figure out how to immediately start an engagement for advisory. And ultimately, it's incompatible with a business owner who's built a system, who charges for their expertise, who is someone who protects their time very intentionally. That's how you want to be operating as a business owner. And when you're constantly saying yes to these pick your brain because you're worried about offending someone, or you're worried about not being generous, or you're feeling guilty, this is holding you back. All right, so these are the costs of saying yes by default. We don't want to do that. And again, I'm not here to tell you on this episode that you should say no to all of them. I'm going to share with you the process of, you will want to decide to say yes to some of these taking a bet on, building relationship. Some of them you just truly want to say yes to because you're interested in having that conversation. But you want to be saying no to some too. You want to know why you say yes to some and no to others. We'll talk about that here in a second with the pick your brain protocol that we're going to build. But before we do, let's talk about the identity shift. So we just touched on this a little bit a moment ago. We were talking about the way you're thinking of yourself, the way that you respond to these pick your brain type requests reinforces the way you think about yourself. If you think about yourself as a peer to people in corporate who are, want to be brand new at consulting or want to start consulting, that reinforces your idea that you're new at this, that you're still figuring it out. And you might be new at this and still figuring it out, but you're further along than they are. And also, there are times where I've talked to consultants who have been doing this for 10 years and they still think that they're new at this and still trying to figure it out. So we don't want to be reinforcing that identity, right? But you want to look at this pick your brain situation and figure out what is the identity shift that you want to make very specifically so that you aren't someone who's just saying yes to these because you're worried about you don't want to be rude, you want to be generous, you don't want to feel guilty, you want to invest in a relationship that might pay off in the future. But as a business owner, as a successful business owner, the way a successful business owner thinks about this is, does this make sense as a use of my time? And what does yes look like for me? They don't just say yes automatically and figure it out. So often we have this identity of, I know I have had this identity for a long time. You might also of, oh, I can figure anything out. And it's mostly true, right? We can get creative. We can get scrappy. We can figure things out. But the more you reinforce this identity of, I'll say yes, I'll figure it out, I'll fit it in, the more you reinforce that chaos as a business owner, that lack of intentionality as a business owner, that lack of you prioritizing or even setting equal what your needs are to other people. So as a business owner would ask, like, what does yes look like for me? And decide that in advance, not in the moment. Knowing that protecting your time is not selfish. It's what makes your business sustainable and you as a business owner sustainable and successful. This is a way of thinking of yourself, a way of thinking of yourself relative to other people that sets you up to be much more protective of your time and much more effective with your time. And therefore, when you're treating your time in a way that's protective, effective, you teach other people to treat it that way too, to treat your time that way too. Think back to times where you know people who are very free with their time. You would ask them so much more willingly than those others that it's really tough to get on their calendar. What are your thoughts about the people that are where it's tough to get on their calendar? Do you think that they're rude? Do you think that they're greedy? Do you think that they're unsuccessful? No, you likely think that they're incredibly successful. That's why it's hard to get on their calendar. And so you want to be starting to question how you're thinking about yourself relative to this pick your brain, how you're thinking about the people asking you to pick your brain, some form of that, whether it's super explicit or more of a hidden request, and start aligning your thinking to that of a successful business owner who protects their time and is efficient and effective with their time so that your business can be long lasting, so that you don't burn yourself out. So that's the first component of this, is that identity shift. And then the next one is the layering on top of that is the B protocol, the pick your brain protocol. What are you going to say yes to? And then what does that look like when you say yes? The key here is deciding in advance, right? Because when we decide on the fly, we get an email or we get a text from someone, hey, can I pick your brain? Or we know that it likely will lead into some form of pick your brain. If it's a little bit disguised and not those exact words, can I pick your brain? You want to know exactly what that triage looks like. You don't want to decide in the moment, because if you're deciding in the moment, it's so much easier to talk yourself into just doing it, because it feels easier just to do it than to spend the time figuring it out, figure out what to say instead. I'll just do it, right? But those "I'll just do it" add up, or "I'll just figure it out." That adds up. So let's talk about the easiest bucket, which is when someone wants to pick your brain about becoming a consultant. And I would offer to you that the answer is no. I'm not going to go to coffee to talk about how to become a consultant. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes or an hour with someone talking about how to become a consultant for you, right? Because you're listening to this podcast, your target market is not other consultants. Your target market are people who are still in corporate, who are decision makers for whatever the type of consulting is that you do. Those people who want to become a consultant are not your target clients. So you want to ask yourself, is this person someone I have a genuine relationship with and then want to invest in? If the answer is yes, then that might be someone where you say, you know what, I'm going to have this conversation about becoming a consultant. But otherwise, the answer is no. And when the answer is no, we'll talk about this here in a moment, but have an alternative. We don't have to ignore them or be rude or dismiss them. There's a simple alternative. I'll tell you what it is here in a second. You could probably guess what it is. But when someone comes to you and says, I want to pick your brain about becoming a consultant, or tell me what it's like to be a consultant, or tell me how you've become successful as a consultant, or how you've lasted this long as at being a consultant, unless it's someone that you want to invest in the relationship for a very specific reason, the answer is no. Now, the next bucket, right? The domain expertise. This one gets a little bit trickier because oftentimes these are your ideal clients. These are your ideal clients, but you also want to have this protocol in place so you're really clear about what you're going to say yes to and what you're not going to say yes to. Is this person a realistic future client or referral source? Are they asking you for something that could be a paid engagement? Can you turn this pick your brain into a discovery call rather than a pick your brain? Like defaulting to this is something I should be paid for. Let me figure out how to make that happen versus I hope that this turns into something. If I invest enough conversations in kind of pick your brain, then hopefully it will turn into an engagement. Do you see the difference? When you start off thinking, this is something that I will likely charge for, let me figure out what that could look like. What does it look like to set up an advisory engagement? Do I have a 30-minute discovery type call with them and then make a proposal? What does that client journey look like for you, whatever that is? But default to that rather than figuring out, well, maybe if I have enough conversations, they'll want to eventually, pay for them. So let's parse these two out. So we've got the two scenarios. We've got the independent, someone who wants to become a consultant like you are, and we've got someone who wants to pick your brain because of your domain expertise. And you've built, as this PYB protocol, you've built the questions that you want to be filtering on. And through those questions, it doesn't have to be long and drawn out. It could be 2 or 3 questions. And I gave you some examples of them, right? I gave you the examples of, is this someone I want to have a genuine relationship with and want to invest in? Want to become a consultant? If on the domain expertise side, is this person a realistic future client or referral source? Those are some examples of what the questions might be. Do I believe they have an immediate opportunity? If the answer is yes to your filtering process as part of your protocol, then you want to be really clear about what this conversation looks like. How long is it? Are you going to travel for it to a coffee shop or lunch? Or is it over Zoom or Teams? Where does it fit on your calendar? So it might be that you say, you know what? I'm going to say yes to one of those. I want to pick your brain about being a consultant. I'm going to say yes to one of those every quarter. And it's going to be the last week of the last month of the quarter. It doesn't have to be next week. So we're so conditioned, right? Especially from corporate, that we need to be responsive. We need to strike while the iron is hot. We need to make sure that we're addressing things quickly. You don't have to do that. You can say yes, and you can tell them, let's book a time in 6 months. When you say yes, you want to know what it looks like. And I would recommend branching this out into 2 buckets. When it's someone wanting to pick your brain about becoming an independent consultant, what does that look like if you decide it's a yes? And also, what does it look like if it's a domain expertise related? Because that's essentially the beginning of your sales cycle. You don't want to just keep getting in this friend zone of constantly having a pick your brain, and you think the more you invest in this pick your brain situation, eventually they'll appreciate it and want to pay you. You want to turn that into a sales process very quickly and get very clear when you want to say yes, what that looks like. And then if the answer is no to either of those buckets, you want to have some resources available immediately. You don't want to brush them off most of the time. Depends on who's reaching out to you to pick your brain. But, we want to be helpful most of the time. So if it's an independent consultant wanting to pick your brain, or someone who wants to become an independent consultant picking your brain, send them to my podcast, right? As of this recording, you've got 275 episodes you could send them to. Them to my IC toolkit that has the 12 steps to launch a consulting business. There's plenty of resources out there to send them to, or have them download my book that I was recommending to you as a companion resource to this episode, right? There's plenty of ways to be helpful to people who want to pick your brain about becoming an independent consultant. So then that leaves us with those individuals who are reaching out to you for your domain expertise that you've filtered and decided right now, no, the answer is no. You can offer them valuable resources, right? Do you have a white paper? Do you have a case study? Do you have a recommendation for them? Do you have a newsletter to say, listen, I don't have the capacity to answer that type of question as pick your brain right now, but here's an alternative. It could be, you know what? I've got a half a day available in a couple of weeks. If you want to set that aside, I can send over the details about what it would look, what the investment would look like and what the structure would look like. You can immediately turn it into a paid engagement, or you can turn it into adding them to your newsletter, of course, with their permission. And then you're providing resources to them every few weeks or whatever your process looks like. Have alternatives in place to make it easier to say no for yourself, so you don't feel bad, you don't feel guilty, you don't question whether it's a good choice or not. You've got these resources in place so that then it makes it easier to say no, not right now, but to keep the relationship going in a less costly way for you. The rule here isn't let's be less helpful. The rule is let's be helpful in ways that aren't costing you and your business. So now, as we wrap up the episode, I think it's really important to address if you do decide to take the meeting. In the scenarios where you decide, I'm going to go forward with this pick your brain meeting, I think that it could eventually turn into an opportunity. I'm going to make the best guess that I have right now that this is a good use of my time. When you get into that situation, I implore you, go into that meeting with an expectation that it could turn into something. So often I see consultants go into these meetings assuming it's not going to go anywhere, assuming the person just wants to pick their brain, assuming that they're not going to engage them, assuming they don't have enough money to engage them in their organization, whatever it is. If you decide, when you decide that you're going to move forward with a pick your brain type meeting, do not go in there expecting nothing. When you go in expecting nothing to come of it, at least in the short term, it impacts how you show up. It impacts the questions you ask. It impacts the recommendations you make. It dilutes your ask or recommendation about what next steps could look like. It waters down your ability to be creative. When you agree to a pick your brain type meeting, do not go in there thinking it's not going to go anywhere or assuming it truly is a pick your brain and that's it type of a meeting. Instead, You are a business owner. You have agreed to put this time on your calendar. Go in expecting that it will turn into something. Even if there's someone wanting to pick your brain about independent consulting, you can certainly ask them questions about what's going on in their organization. Why are they wanting to leave? Where's the organization falling short? When does the organization engage consultants? Are they at a place right now where the type of work you do would be really valuable? Who do they know that would be a great fit for you as a client? These are all ways of turning even those conversations into next steps and a valuable use of your time beyond the altruistic part of it. Go into the meetings expecting it will turn into something rather than expecting it won't, because you will position yourself in such a different way. And know, if there's a fit, call it out. Based on what you're describing, this sounds like something I work on with clients. Would it make sense to talk about that? Don't wait for them to ask you. You take that initiative. You transition it from pick your brain to a next step. This is really important. And it's so common for independent consultants to miss that opportunity because you're in a comfortable setting. You feel like someone respects you. They want to pick your brain, and you take your eye off the ball and miss that opportunity when you've decided to allocate your resources, your time, and also those intangibles as well. The ability to build out skills, the ability to sell advisory. That's what we want to turn this into. All right, as we wrap up today's episode, here are the next steps to put it into action. Go build out your Pick Your Brain protocol, the PYB protocol. Figure out what your filtering system is. I would set this on a quarterly basis. This quarter, if anyone's asking me about what it takes to become an independent consultant, I'm going to do 2 of those calls or none of them. I'll send them all to Melissa's podcast. When I know that someone is truly wanting to pick my brain about my expertise, I'm willing to take on 1 of those a month or 2 of those a month. If they meet these criteria, or even 1 a week or 2 a week, if they meet this criteria, and promising yourself that you're going to, work on your skills to turn it into an opportunity, like an advisory engagement right away. And then, so that's the first piece, pick your brain protocol, define that. And then next, go back and look at the last 3 pick your brain meetings. I love going back and looking at past things that have happened. They're already done. You can't do anything about them now. They're over. But going back and mining them for good information for you. Look at those 3 pick your brain meetings. What were the flags that they were actually a pick your brain meeting instead of something else that you missed? Should you have said yes or no based on your new filtering system? How could you have made more out of that meeting if you decided to go forward with it? Go back and diagnose those, because then that will help you to reinforce and improve that pick your brain protocol. And then finally, don't forget to download the Grow Your Consulting Business book so you can reference that mindset chapter that's so important as you're building out your business and getting to the point where you think of yourself in that identity of, I'm a successful independent consultant at the 500K mark or the $1 million mark, even if you're not even close to those milestones yet. And this is the way I operate my business. The more you get yourself into that identity and that headspace, then the more the actions and the way of positioning yourself and the confidence that you have will follow. All right, my friend, thanks for tuning in this week, and I will see you again next time. Take care.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.